Welcome everybody to this first webinar that we're going to do on an end-to-end solution. I'm Olivier Mas, I'm one of the co-founders of Baserow, and I'm here today with Frederic. Frederic Duchy is one of our more seasoned product specialists. He actually built solution for our clients and also for the Baserow Academy and for the tutorials. So what we're going to do today is actually walk you through a full end-to-end solution, and we'll have some time to explain with what we build it, why we think that building it in our platform is a good idea, and then we'll go straight into a demo, and we will make sure that there is enough time for questions. So what I want to cover today is the scope of what we could, because governance, risk, and compliance is a broad topic. So what is the scope of today's solution that we're going to present? How did we actually build it? I want to say a few words around no code and open source, especially in the theme of risk and compliance. This is a topic that is sometimes controversial. Then we'll go into the live demo, and then we will do the Q&A. So today's solution is going to cover a couple of topics. So we'll cover policy management. That means if you're an organization, how you make sure that you keep track of all the different policies that you and your employees need to adhere to. We'll cover incident management. How do you actually identify incidents? How do you react to them? How do you make sure that employees are doing what they're supposed to do in the scope of GRC? How do you actually assess a risk? So what is a risk? How do you define it? How do you give it different levels of importance? How do you manage assets within your company? And then finally, something which impacts a lot of the companies, especially in Europe, is everything related to ESG management, also with the CSRD compliance regulations that are in effect in Europe. So some of the challenges we're trying to address with building a solution in Baserow have to do with consistent data capture. The fact that a lot of the clients that we talk to have an inconsistent data capture process. It comes from in various tools, in various formats, which makes it pretty labor intensive in order to do a proper GRC across the company. There's very often a lack of real-time monitoring. That means that data tends to be outdated and is very rarely real-time. There's also silos between the different departments in a company. So you will have one department that has certain data that is not shareable with the other team, and it becomes complex when you want to try to get a holistic view of your risk within the company. We also have an issue related to data security and privacy. A lot of the out-of-the-box tools are SaaS-only platforms, which creates an issue for data privacy, GDPR, SOC 2 compliance. So this is something that our customers really worry about. And then the lack of flexibility is another one that we hear a lot, is around, out-of-the-box tools tend to guide you in a certain way of doing your work, and we come to risk management, and you lack the flexibility to actually make it as simple or as complex as your organization needs it. And then lastly, because obviously we're talking about no code today, is most of our customers are not developers. The users are not developers. So how can you make sure that you evolve from something which was mainly done in spreadsheets or Excel sheets can still be done in an effective way without having to build custom application and becoming a developer? So we're going to cover a lot of these challenges today. How did we build the solution? So we actually build it fully in Baserow today. So you'll see the database builder in action. That's basically how you structure your data. It looks like a spreadsheet, but it's actually a relational database. It's pretty powerful. It's API first. It allows you to import data, and very user-friendly for people that come from a spreadsheet background. So you'll see a lot of the collaboration features in there. And then the other module that we use today, and that's probably newer to most of you if you've been a Baserow user in the last year or so, is the application builder. This is a new, interesting module that we've been working on for the last 12 months. It's coming out of beta at the end of January. And this is where you will be able to see how you start to expose and link data from different databases into a web application, which is really what the users are looking for when they're doing a governance, risk, and compliance solution, is that you'll have a whole variety of users. You'll have the users in the database, and you'll have users that will maybe only use an application to do their job. What do we also see, because we're going to talk about no-code today, what do we see with a lot of the no-code tools today? And that is some of the, I would say, the pushback that a lot of the customers have initially with no-code, is that most of these no-code tools are SaaS only and closed source. They tend to scale to a certain level, and then whether it's pricing, whether it's performance and stability, they tend to not scale very well at the larger organization level. They very often have a limited API access. So you'll have some API, and everybody will tell you that you have a way to integrate with other tools that you already have in your company through the APIs. But the reality is that not every feature, not every functionality of these tools is an API endpoint. You don't have ownership of the data. That's also a problem. So you will have a SaaS provider that will provide you with a solution, but ultimately the data resides somewhere in the data center, quite often in the United States, from a lot of these providers. Price-wise, it can be expensive because typically a no-code tool, you might use one no-code tool in one department for a use case, and then another no-code tool in another department. If you start adding up all of the license costs, which are usually user-based, you end up with a pretty expensive technology stack, because you need to have one of these tools in for every use case. And then lastly, the security and compliance issue. Most of these tools, they might say that GDPR or HIPAA compliant, but the actual requirements with a lot of organizations is to have the say of where you can deploy the data and if you have access to that data yourself. Now, open source, I'm not so sure how familiar you are with that, but open source is not per se free, right? Open source is actually an enabler for a lot more. And that's why at Baseflow, we decided to open source the platform, because it has a couple of big advantages for users. One is the lack of vendor lock-in, right? So you actually own the code, you own the software. If you want to self-host, if anything happens to the company that you use the software with, you actually are in control and have no disruption in the business. From a security perspective, open source allows you to self-host. You have the opportunity to inspect the code, and you have a whole community working on the platform, which actually makes it more secure than closed source software. In terms of scalability, the deployment options are a vast variety. You can go from small deployments for little data to very scalable and horizontal scalable deployments. And then you have an economic value. Right? So you actually can use the software for free until you really have proven the value. You're not tied up into free trial periods that expire after a couple of weeks. It's actually a very good value for money, because you just deploy it until the value has been proven, and you might need some of the paid features. And then finally, it's extensible. So if you are a developer, if you want to extend the tool, if you want to create new features and functionality, it's possible if you have access to the code. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Frederick so that we actually go and have a look in the tool, what we've built, and then we'll reopen the floor for questions and answers.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. So let me share my screen for the demo. Okay, like Olivier mentioned, let's go over the scope first. So those are the databases involved in the project. First of all, I have my risk assessment database where I store all my registered risks. I do the assessment of the risk, and an assessment of the risk is saying how heavy will the impact be if the risk becomes an incident, and how likely it is that the risk ever becomes an incident. This database also stores mitigation plans and strategies. Second database is the incident management, where I store all the reported incidents and all the responses I have offered to an incident. So what have I done to handle the incident. And I will use plans for my risk assessment database. I also drag in the policy management database. It has all the available policies, violation consequences, and more important, request updates to the policies. And a request update can be triggered because of an incident. Finally, we take in the information from the HR department. It has all the employee information. And if we bundle all this, then we have my GRC application. Let's have a look how this looks in Base Row. I have a workspace, and my workspace actually has 6 databases. First one is the employee directory. It has a table with all my employee information. Employee information can be very specific, like email, phone number, but can also be personal information like home address, date of birth, when is my birthday this year, and so on. My risk assessment database, well, it syncs with my employees table, but not all the information. And this is one of the nice features in Base Row since 1.28. It is that you are able to sync tables between databases. So the team that's working on risk assessment and management, it has the employee information, but only limited information, only the relevant information they need. They don't have the personal information like home address, date of birth, salary, and so on, because it's not relevant to them. Furthermore, we have a table with risk registrations. So a product recall, it's a risk, category is reputation, it's an internal risk, it's an active one, and so on. We also do the risk assessments. We can do multiple assessments for a risk on a certain base, so monthly, quarterly, yearly. And for each assessment, you make an estimation of the impact and the likelihood. And finally, we have the mitigation plans. So for each risk, we have one or more plans. What will we do if the risk ever becomes an incident? Next database is the incident management database. It syncs again with my employees table. It syncs with the risk categories table, so I can reuse the same categories in all my databases. And it syncs with the action plans. This means in my incident table, if I report a new incident, and I create a response for the incident, that I can refer to an action plan made in my risk assessment database. And finally, my policy management database, it syncs with risk categories, with employees, and with incidents. I have a number of policies. Each policy has one or more change requests or update requests, and there are some consequences when violating a policy, going from very low to end of the relationship. Those are my databases, and I have one big application that actually integrates all these databases into one single GRC solution. Let's first walk through the entire application, and then we can look how the application actually was constructed. First of all, I need to log in, and to log in, I need an email and a password. And those details are stored in my employee directory, so they're only stored once. Here in my employees table, I have email and I have a password field that I'm using. So let's sign in into my application. And once I'm signed in, I have my major dashboard. I see a summary for each category. How many risks do I have registered for operational, for reputation? How many incidents do I have on each of those categories? And how many policies do I have? I also have some tasks to do. For example, for risk management, if I say a natural disaster, it has to be assessed yearly, but it has never been assessed. Well, then I need to create an assessment or reassessment. The same for reputation damage. It has to be done quarterly, and the last time was the 12th of April. Well, I urgently need to do a new assessment. The same for my incident management. Those are open incidents I need to handle, and policy management. Those are my policies that are in progress. Let's have a deeper look at risk management and go to the entire flow of creating a risk, making a plan for it, making it an incident, and adjusting a policy. So in my risk management, I have all the urgent tasks again, and I have an overview of all the risks I already registered. Let's register for a new risk. For example, a risk can be data loss, due to misplaced laptops or stolen laptops. Let's add a small description to it, one that I have ready to copy paste. We have an expected cost, let's say 12,000. I select the category, it would be an operational risk. Internally, the status is I propose the risk, it's not active yet, and I want to reassess it every quarter. Okay, the risk has been created, and I here have my detail page where I can adjust actually all fields. I can make it from proposed to active and updated, but I need to assess my risk. So I'm going to create a new assessment, and let's make this the Q4 assessment. I'm going to set it on the date of today. Findings, well, must be prevented at all costs, because the impact would be very high or critical even, but the likelihood, let's say that's medium. And I add this new assessment. So the new assessment for this risk has been added to my database, and I have a nice overview here. I can update it, and if I have multiple assessments, I see all the assessments here in a table. Let's go back to my risk. So I see now that risk assessments, I actually have a assessment for the risk, and let's create a plan for it. So if the risk ever becomes an incident, one of my plans is I'm going to do a remote wipe of the hard disk. So description, erase all data, and the due date to have this plan ready. Let's say I want to have it ready by next Monday, and let's say that's one in progress. So I created an action plan, and it should mitigate the risk that data is lost due to stolen items. So as far as I'm concerned with the risk management part, then we're done. I quickly gonna perform a data sync. So my action plans, I'm gonna do it manually now, but you can say, okay, automatically we sync every hour, we sync overnight, just that my new created action plan is now available also for incident management. Because that's a next step I want to take. Here I have my incident portal, and let's create or report a new incident. So incident title, an employee has lost his laptop. And let's say it's happened today. It happened at the airport, Terminal A, for example. And I can assign it to one of my employees. A category will be an operational incident. It's clearly a human error. Pretty high level of incident, internal, and the status is, okay, I reported my incident and I want it to be solved pretty quickly. And maybe IT is involved, so it's an escalated incident. So far I did everything on a desktop, but the application builder is actually pretty good at responsive design. So if I work on a mobile, then you see my menu nicely gets on top of each other, and my form also becomes responsive. So I can report an incident if you're in a factory context or in the context of manufacturing. You have mobile devices on the floor, then you can also report incidents from mobile devices. Okay, so the incident has been reported. Let's create a response to my incident. No, that's not the incident. Let me first go to the right incident. So an employee has lost a laptop. Jump into the details. And I'm going to create a new response. My response title, wipe the hard disk. And it can be done today. And my action plans, if I search here for wipe, I can see that I actually can now select a plan that was associated with my risk management. So mitigation plans, action plans in the risk management can be used as a response to my incident. So I have created a response to it. The incident is that my employee has lost the laptop. If I go back to the incident, then I see that I have created a response. I can also push a policy change. So in order to prevent all the further incidents, maybe we need to update some policies. So let's go to my policy management. Again, I have my dashboard here with some unpublished policies, some open requests. But here I have an overview of all my policies, and I want to know, is there something that is useful to prevent those things as being losing your laptops? So let's search for cyber or cybersecurity, and indeed we have a cybersecurity policy. I'm going to open it. So this is my policy. It was published the 15th of April. It's approved. Okay. And this is the policy itself, has a purpose, has a scope, has some guidelines. But in the guidelines, I don't see anything that refers to losing laptops. So I'm going to create a new change request. And the title is update for lost devices. Description, what to do if a device is lost. Okay. I can set my request date again on today. It's requested. Motivation because of an incident, and the incidents that will be prevented. Well, data loss, but it's not in here yet because I have to perform a sync over here. So I'm syncing my data. And now with the simple page refresh, let me quickly fill in the fields again. An employee has lost his laptop. Okay, I have added my change. Once the change is approved, let's say it's approved on Thursday, instead of requested, it's approved. Then we have updated our policy because of a certain incident. Okay, so far the entire chain of what we already have built. Maybe take a minute to look at some questions. Are there any open questions?
Yes, maybe actually, let me read them out so that maybe we can demonstrate that, Frederick. So one question is related to user management and levels of access. So I suggest we have a look at how we define the roles in the database and how you define the roles in the application that you built here.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not working with a lot of roles here, but it's definitely possible. In my settings for my application, I have users, and the user source are my employees. So where do the users come from? They come from my database employee directory, from the table employees. This is their username, the email field. That is the name that is appearing on top of the screen. So if this is saying Brian Lopez, department manager, well, that's because of the name field and the job role field. And the password is set by the password field. So if I have a look over here, I have my employees. Let's have a look. And my employees have a certain job role. Yep, it's over here, being department manager, recruitment specialist, and so on. If I now go to my application and I say, for example, this home page over here, there are certain things like this table should only be visible for department managers. Well, it's for certain roles, and here I have all my job descriptions, and I can say, okay, this one is only for the department manager, but there are also other fields that I can say, for example, this one, visibility, I'm going to set it for no one, disallow, select everyone except for, let's say, a quality assurance specialist. Yeah. So depending on the job role or on the level, you can choose to show or hide certain information.
So the way we define the roles in the database, the roles are actually set. We have an administrator, a builder, an editor, a commenter, and a reader. So these are the 5 roles that exist in the database. And then in the application, you can actually create as many roles as you want, because every application will be very specific for the type of user. That's why you see a much larger number of job roles here in the application than what you would see in the database. The database is really about who is able to add users, who's able to build databases, who's able to edit data, versus the application roles are much more about what a specific job title is, should be able to see, should be able to perform in terms of actions. Okay, then I have another question. If it's possible to connect Base-Row with an external Know Your Customer provider and store the results? Yes, so the answer is definitely yes. So Base-Row is an API-first database, and maybe we can quickly show Frederick where the API can be found in the database, and that's where basically you would connect to an external data source, whereby you'll be able to make sure that you import data from an external source in Base-Row. All right, if you have a, for instance, if it could be a CRM or it could be another type of tool. So maybe Frederick, can we quickly show how to access the API?
From the database?
Database, yeah.
Yeah.
The database, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, each database has actually its own API. So if you click on the 3 dots next to a database and you click View API Docs, for example, my employees table, if I want to list all the records in my employees table, well, this will be the endpoint I have to call. So from whatever application, even if you like to write code, if you're making a JavaScript, React application, well, you can call this endpoint and it will return all your employees. Of course, you have to authenticate your request by passing the authorization header, and you can pass actually 2 things. You can pass a token that you set through your user settings, or you can pass a GWT, a JSON Web Token, that is generated also through the API by combining your username and password.
Okay, thank you, Frederick. I have another question related to the pricing of the license for a portal users versus a regular Base-Row user. So that's a good question, right? We haven't publicized any of the pricing yet, so we will announce it in January, but I will already give a sneak peek about what we're thinking about. So we will charge the external application users, so users that do not need access to the Base-Row database, but will only interface with an application. We consider these external application users, and these users will probably be charged around $4 per user per month. So it will be a lower price, and then it will be scaling down. You know, if you create an application with thousands of users, then we'll go into some custom pricing. The reasoning behind that is actually that an application tends to have more external users than a database, and that's typically for our customers, it's tough to charge for that application. If you create a portal, it's more a service that you have to your customers, so it has to be something that scales nicely with larger volumes, otherwise it's not affordable. And there we will compete with other no-code app builder companies. So we have, you know, there's a lot of these no-code app builders. We believe that with a combination whereby a small portion of the team has a license for Base-Row to use the database, and then a larger population has access to the applications built in Base.ro, the overall economics will be very interesting for our users, because instead of having to buy multiple tools, multiple licenses, you actually buy one platform and you have the license for the database and you have the license for the application users, and then every department can use and build the applications that they need and have their own budget for that. Let me see if I have another question here. There's another one, interesting one actually, around graphs and dashboards. Will there be charting capabilities added? Yes, absolutely. We're full-fledged developing that functionality. So we will launch it in February, the first version. So it will actually be very similar to the application build that we showed. It's not going to be a chart showing like a view, like, you know, normally what you have in the database today, you have a certain table, and then that table you can create views of it. The dashboarding and graph capabilities will be much more sophisticated, like an application, so that you can connect actually tables from different databases, and it really allows you to create widgets, so pie charts, graph charts, etc., from different data sources in order to really have a graph/dashboard application. So we just ask you for a little bit of patience. We need another 3 months or so to release it, and then it's going to continue to evolve release after release with more functionalities. Other question, if a user wants to access the Base.ro application builder page via SSO, not through the app builder login screen, yes, this is coming next week. So we will release that next week with the release of Base.ro 1.30. Okay, so that is definitely coming. Then there's another one. How many records can you write per second via the API Base.ro? You can insert records in bulk chunk of 500. Yeah, I think the concurrent API calls is, yeah, no, I think that's the right answer. So you can insert records in bulk in chunks of 200 per user request. Yeah, and yeah, if you are self-hosting, obviously you can set your own limit. We've set some limits just because we are multi-tenant and we have a lot of users. Will Base.ro app builder create conditional visibilities for fields when field A is populated with value 1, then show or hide value B? Yes. So maybe Frederick, you can. Is there a way we can quickly show that, how the conditional forms work? Do you have that somewhere in one of your tables? So we actually already have that feature. It's basically called a conditional form. So you create a form directly from the database. So Frederick, I'll let you just walk us through that.
Yeah, I don't have a conditional form, but let's quickly simulate one that, for example, I set the source, and let's say if it's internal, then we don't need to set the status, for example. So show when a condition is met. Well, if my source is set to internal, then I'm going to show this field. Otherwise, I'm not going to show this field. So if I run the preview mode here, I'm going to set this to external. Nothing happens. I set it to internal, and my status field appears.
Thank you.
So maybe it's a stupid use case, but it's the only one I can think of so quickly. If you now want to use this in your application builder, something nice is the iframe element. So I'm going to copy this URL, and I'm going to my application. I'm going to add a new page. I'm going to create an element, and I'm going to embed an iframe. And this is the URL of my iframe. I'm going to set the height to, let's say, 800. And then I have this form inside the application builder. So actually, it's a form view that we are seeing, but yeah, it's inside the application builder.
Thank you, Frederick. I think that's very clear. Then there's a question: are you about ISO 27001 certification for the hosted version? Yes, great question. So we are, as you know, we're already SOC 2, GDPR, and HIPAA compliant. So actually, to go towards the ISO certification, we probably have another 40% of tests to do. So we've already given the mandate to an auditor to start that in the new year. So we'll be starting in January, and they will probably get our ISO certification in the course of Q2. So that's our plan today. Good question. Are you using yourself this GRC solution, and what is audited? Great question. We actually, I think we don't use it yet because we actually just built it, right? So we literally built it this month based on input from different users that we had. So we do actually use a lot Basero for different use cases. We use it in sales as a CRM. For the pipeline management, we use it for our feature prioritization. So we have an integration, for instance, with GitLab, where all the new feature requests are created, and that links into a Basero table. We use it for tracking the different activities on the website. So we have an enormous amount of databases in different workspaces that we use across the teams, but this one specifically, not yet. To be also honest, we're a bit of a smaller company, so I think this might be in certain cases a little bit over designed for us, but there are definitely elements that we can use, especially because of our SOC compliance and GDPR. We need to have some incident response plans in place, etc. So this is definitely something that we plan to use, but because how new it is, we haven't used it yet. We just wanted to build it first and then share it with everybody. Let me see if there are more questions. I think we pretty much covered. Oh, here's another one. Are there very easy ways to visualize data models on Basero application? Trying to understand what exactly you mean by the data model. So I'm not sure, Frederick, do you understand the question? I'm actually not sure if I understand the question very well. Maybe Aditya, yeah. Frederick, go ahead.
Is it, well, maybe just to create a data source and show it in a table element? Because, well, that was anyway the next thing I liked to demonstrate.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, if there are any questions, just type them in the chat. We come back to it definitely. But, well, what you have seen now, it's a solution that I created in a couple of days. But if you would like to sell this solution, then it would be no other than just another software package that you buy. The nice thing is you can configure this any way you want. So, for example, there is one thing in my application that personally disturbs me, being in my response details. So if I have a response to a certain incident, let's go over here. So I go to my incident management and check for my lost laptop. So the policy update, yeah, it's nice to see that there's a policy change, but maybe I want to trigger the policy change from within my incident response. I want to have a button here that says, hey, I want to request a policy change. And that's something that you can easily do. So let's go back to Basero. And the application builder, well, it uses pages. Response detail is just such a page. And on a page, you can create data sources. And I'm going to create a data source that gets all my policies. So I create a new data source. It will be multiple rows. And I'm going to get all my active policies because there's no use in getting policies that are not approved yet. In my policy management database, I have my policies table and I have a view policies that are approved. I can set further filter, sorting and searching, but I'm fine. I'm going to use this one. And now I'm going to create elements. So I'm going to set a new heading. It will be an H3 element. Request policy update. And again, for each element, I can say, hey, this is visible for only certain users. So for example, only a department manager is one that can demand a policy update. I'm going to show this data in the table element. So this table using my get all active policies table. And now I'm showing all the data in a table element. Of course, I don't need all the data. the name. Instead of a text, I'm going to make it a hyperlink where I will show the name of my policy. And if I click on it, I go to a new page, being the policy details page. And this requires a parameter being the ID of my policy. So the keywords, I don't need them. Published date, status, purpose and scope, yeah, can be interesting. Category, owner, guidelines can all be removed. Maybe the count of my change requests. Yeah, the category name and the owner name can be removed. So I now have data. I visualize it in the table. And I already mentioned that we are very responsive with the application builder, even for a table that doesn't really look good on mobile. What you can do is say, for a table, I want to align it vertically. And now you have all your items on top of each other. Also for tablet mode, and you can make it horizontally again for your desktop mode. I'm going to add another field, and this will be a link field, and the text will be add change request. It will go to my add new change request page, and I'm going to pass the policy ID. Okay, would be easier if I was not at the bottom of my page. Just a second. Yep, here we go. So this is just me rearranging my screen internally a little bit. And I want to see it as a button because it looks much nicer in a button view. So if I publish my application again, and I'm going to refresh my page. Let's close this one. Then I should see for my response details that I now have a request policy update where I can find a certain policy and add a change request. Now, it's hard to find a policy like this, so I'm going to add a couple of more things. I'm going to say, hey, I want to search by name. I want to search by keywords. I want to search by scope, by purpose. Maybe add some filtering, but filtering is maybe not that relevant here. I want to sort by name. So let's give it another publish so that my search will become available. Okay, let's refresh it one more time. And this is also something that is new since 1.29. Being able to search a table or a repeat element. So now I have my cybersecurity policy. I already did an update, but I can again make a new request. So if I go back here, add change request, well, then for the cybersecurity policy, I fill in a new request. So there's one thing you can change, but of course, changes can go much deeper than that. So this was my first one. As a second change, let's drag in the logistics department and let's drag in asset management because each organization has a lot of assets being laptops, furniture, kitchen equipment, machinery, and so on. So that's also a database I already had here with asset management. I have a lot of assets. Assets are assigned to a certain user. They can go into maintenance. They can be replaced. There can be issues and so on. Inside my risk assessment and management database, I'm going to add a new table. I'm going to sync with a new base row table. And as you can see, we're not limited to ourselves. If you're using GitLab or GitHub, or you're using Jira to keep track of issues, you have a Postgres database, well, you can sync with all those data sources, and there are many data sources to come. For example, Salesforce is one of the integrations integrations we are working on. So an assets table, it will come from my asset management database. And I only need some basic information. So when it's purchased, the warranty, replacement, and so on. I don't really care about this data. This is what I want. And I'm going to create a new field where I'm going to concatenate the name. I'm going to add the ID to it, and I'm going to add the serial number to it. And I'm going to make this the primary field of my table, offer it a proper name. So now I can use this table like any other table in a base row. Let's hide the row ID. And those fields, those synced fields, well, I cannot change them because they are synced, but I'm able to add other fields. Let's go to my risk registrations, and I'm going to add a link to my assets table. Yeah. And maybe in my assets table, I'm going to create a view that I only want to see the active assets. So I'm going to add a filter where status is active. And in my risk registrations, I'm going to limit the choices to the view active assets. So I cannot select assets that are already out of circulation. Back to my application, because I also need to make some changes here, where I'm going to add a new risk. I have a category here. I'm going to add a data source first. It will be multiple records. I'm getting my active assets from my synced assets table, the active ones. And I'm going to duplicate this element. Well, instead of duplicating, I could also insert the record selector, but I now have the styling over here. So select affected assets. I'm going to change my data source, and I will allow search on the display name. I also need to update my event here, where I say, okay, if I submit it, now the assets will also be stored. Let's publish my application once again, and we're going to add a new risk, and you will see that I'm now able to assign one or more assets to a certain risk. So risk management, yeah, that's an error message just because I published and then I navigate to a page that is trashed and needs to be reloaded. So reloading solves the problem. Just a demo. And as you can see, I have all my affected assets here. Just one mistake, I can only select one asset. If I check this allow multiple values and I publish again, then I will be able to check and uncheck multiple assets. So published. Let's reload the page here. Quickly demo. Yeah, and now I have the checkbox where I can say, okay, I have the MacBook, I have this one, I have the HP laptop. And my risk has been registered. Of course, I can already see it in the database now. So if I go to my registered risks, I should be able to see it for my demo. They haven't been stored. So Probably I have forgotten to confirm something. While updating.
So maybe while we're doing that, I'm gonna ask, maybe I'm gonna answer two more questions. So there's another question whether we have more examples of how we use the application builder, for instance, so how we use it as a CRM or other internal applications. That's a question from Aditya. So yes, what you will see more and more, we're going to publicize these application templates. So when you start from scratch or you want to import data, so typically you will see on the base row homepage that you can start with an application, or you can start from a template, and more of these templates will have the database structure and the application as templates, so that you can actually get started without having to start from scratch. And then there's another question, if the application can be made public. Yes, it's public by nature. So you can actually, if you are building applications for your customers, you can actually build the database and then create applications externally, and build an app for every one of your customers, whether it's the same app, whether you want to build a SaaS offering for your customers. We do have what we call an independent software vendor program. So this is for companies that would want to build software on Base Row, whereby you white label the solution and you're able to build something for a specific industry, and whether you host it with us or whether you host it in your own cloud provider, then offer it as a SaaS to your customers.
Yeah. I just added manually a couple of assets. Must be some caching issue. But what I want to demonstrate is how you can show the selected item. So I now store the asset information, and if I now want to show it, in my details page, I created 3 columns instead of 2. I can add a repeat element, selecting my risk details and selecting my assets field. Now in the repeat element, it's an element that repeats over your entire table. I can add in a text element and say, show me the value. So my demo issue was item 24. And here we go. I have all my selected assets. Yeah. So actually what I've done is creating 2 updates. First of all, making the link with the policy management more obvious. And the second change is dragging in the asset management and making it possible to do asset management, or also to involve asset management in your risk assessments. If you want to get started with this yourself, well, all the templates I've been using are already available in 1.29. So the risk assessment and management template, the incident management template, the policy management template, also asset management. We haven't touched ESG today, but it's also available just like the employee directory. So immediately after the webinar, you can go to baserow.io/templates or create a new workspace. Select start from template multiple times. You link them together with synced tables, and you are ready to go to build your own application. So that's it for my demo part. Let's dive into a couple of questions.
Yes, there's one more question related to the templates. If the application and database templates have versioning, or can be exported into a versioning friendly form. So I guess I know the answer to that one. So we actually, so the templates are available on baserow.io for download. We tend to update the templates very regularly. Now that is actually not something that happens automatically. So we typically tend to focus on the templates for the application and databases that are most used, in order to inject the latest features. So for instance, when we launched the AI field a couple of months ago, we need to insert that field into the template. So currently there's no automatic versioning and upgrade capabilities in the application. It's something that we currently do manually for the different templates. But obviously when you have a template and you start and install the template for your application or database, if you are on the latest version from Baseware, which you are always if you are in the hosted version, and if you regularly refresh your Docker image, for instance, for the self-hosters, then you always have the different features and you can add them to any template that you are using. Maybe I have another question here. Is it possible to build a public survey form with conditional form fields based on the answers of a question? I think we answered that one earlier already, Rutger. So yeah, we showed how to do that, both in directly from a database to create the form, and then how to embed the form as an iframe into an application.
Yeah, and we also have the survey mode. So for my incidents, I have this form and I can set mode to survey, and then you will have one question at a time. But so if I go from the second question on, you can again set conditions. So the category only show it when, for example, the reporter, which was the previous question, has a certain value.
So we have a minute or so to wrap it up. So this might be a lot of information for those of you who haven't really built applications ever. So we do have a couple of enablement content that we will have available. So for those who might have noticed, we launched the Baseware Academy last week. So currently the first module of the Baseware Academy is a module which is called the fundamental module, which is predominantly focused on the database. The second module will be released before the end of this year, and then that will cover a lot more what happens on the application builder. So I would definitely encourage, it's free, right? You can go step by step, you can get your certification. We'll do another advanced level that we will be releasing in the course of Q1, which is the expert level, which will focus a lot more on self-hosted, scalability, security, some of the best practices. So that's definitely interesting for you if you're self-hosting or if you're a software partner that wants to build applications and build SaaS products for your customers. We'll have a series of videos, so we'll share that as a follow-up. This webinar is recorded, so you will get the recording to your inbox after this webinar. And then Frederick and Colin, who is his colleague, are also offering services. So if you have a use case and you need some professional services support, we actually offer a service whereby we actually build the application and the database for you. It typically, given that it's no code, these are fairly short-term engagements. That means that somewhere between 10 working days of work, we can probably build an application for you and with the automation. So if you have a project, if you need some help, please feel free, just answer the contact sales form. You will be redirected. Probably we'll have a conversation with you to scope what is your process and how you do it today and what it needs to be, what are different user stories. And then you can work directly with us to build the applications. We're also launching our partner program early next year, so that also will have a series of implementation partners that can build the application for you.
Yeah. I also, there was a question for the Academy. So academy.baseware.io, I shared the link for that. And I also, I think I now understand the question about templates and versioning. What we have since, I think 1.29 is the export and import data functionality. So for this webinar, I did a couple of tests. I did a dry run, I did a demo, and so on. And how I'm able to do this? Well, simply by exporting the data. If I export it, and after the export, I download it, I have one zip file with my entire workspace. So the zip file contains all the assets, contains all the databases, contains all the applications. So actually, this allows you to create a solution on one instance and deploy it to other instances.
Great. So thanks everybody for taking the time today to spend the full hour. A lot of great questions. So thanks a lot. And definitely, we would encourage you to test it out. Everything is for free, so you can start straight ahead without any investment. Make an account and try the application. Look at the templates. If you need any help, feel free to reach out. All the apps that we've shown you today are web applications. That means these are not native apps, because there's a question about, okay, can you actually deploy it on an app store or Google store? These are web applications, right? So you need connectivity. They are responsive apps, but they are 100% web applications, right? So they're not native apps. That's important to understand. So for now, I just want to thank everybody. Thanks, Frederick, for the great demo. And yeah, curious to see what you will be building. We'll be launching a competition in the first quarter next year to build great applications as we go out of beta with the app builder. So if you feel motivated to build something and participate, please subscribe to the newsletter, and then you will receive an invitation. And for now, I want to thank you, and we're going to end the event. Have a great day, great evening, everybody, and see you soon. Bye-bye.